Hi, welcome to Improv Interviews. I'm Margot Escott, and I'm so happy today to introduce a new friend of mine, Mr. Eric Fisher. Eric is a tech geek, maybe a former tech geek, but currently still a tech genius in my book, and has been working with improv, teaching, playing, performing. And we met through David Carbonell, part of the Therapy Players in Chicago. We've been searching out other therapists and improvisers in the country that are interested in making improv work for all kinds of people, especially as a healing art. And we now, thanks to Eric, have a new website, mindfulimprov.org. So good morning, Eric.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great. So how'd you get into this improv stuff?
Well, as a kid, I was always doing improv and playing characters and having fun with that. But then I closed up that part of myself when I went into the tech and design world. Doesn't really have space for enthusiasm like characters. It's a lot more buckled down and objective. And then after a while in that space, I left and I kind of reclaimed this part of myself and have been back in, finding groups to do it with and leading some workshops, because it turns out that the therapy that I went through in order to reclaim this part of myself is exactly what makes for good improv. And I've noticed from being back involved that there are a lot of bad teachers out there, not just for improv, but in general for anything. And I feel like the good ones their voices are lower because they don't need to shout as much, So I want to help people understand what improv's really about, because most people they get scared when you mention improv. I can't do that. I can't think on my feet. I can't make stuff up on the spot. And then I say to them, well, did you make up this conversation on the spot, or was this rehearsed? Did you plan this out? And they're like, well, this is different. And no, it's not different. I don't know why it has to be different. And the one thing that I do see is that those who perform improv, or they think about it as a show, there is a lot of fear there because it involves public speaking, which is like the number one fear. So if you take that out of the equation, if you just make it a group thing that you do with a group of 10 people, no performing, just interacting, it's extremely healing, because we're so used to a very combative conversation in day-to-day life, especially in the professional environment. My God, it's like egos battling egos, and nobody even knows what's going on. So you get home and you just feel like depressed, maybe, and like the energy has been sucked out of you, and you wonder well, I need people because we're social beings, but I can't interact with them because it's just such a drain. So what's going on? And then in an improv environment, it's like a very safe space where everything's very constructive and very emotionally expressive, and you can leave that space feeling so much better about being a social creature in this world, because you're like, oh, okay, that's how it can feel. But without it, you're basically just stuck in this world, running around trying to find social cohesion, and I don't know, it doesn't exist day to day very easily.
I think you're
That's
right.
The end of that rant.
And I think the principle of yes and is so significant, because that's one of the first things we learn is the yes and philosophy. And that's one of the hooks that the other therapists I've spoken with, as well as myself, found. The acceptance, non-judging, no wrongs, yes and philosophy. And those all tie in so well with the therapeutic process about making people feel safe and confident and learning to love themselves.
Very true. It's also very much related to mindfulness and meditation.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, I've read a bunch of books on all of these subjects over the years, my own personal master's education. But it seems like people have brought these concepts together before. This is not the first time. Mm-hmm. But even then, the earliest books I can find that are really substantial seem to be even fairly recent, like the 90s or the 80s. It's not like 1950s. And psychology itself is only 100 years old. So I'm wondering if this is the time now If like now it's really coming together, and then those of us who are aware that you're all interrelated should really speak up and do something about it, because we have the tools now at our disposal, and the world is as it exists, and we could, I don't know, we could make something big with it if we pull together.
It's like the dawning of Aquarius, but I think these things are converging now. They've been around for a long time, and there was a wonderful book, If You Meet the Buddha on the Road, Kill Him, years ago. I'm a little bit older than you, and there's some books that actually have been out, especially since meditation booms. You know, starting in 1967, once the Beatles started meditating, a lot of us started meditating. And mindfulness is really a form of meditation, is what it is. But it's like everything old is new again. And and we're seeing this, and that mindfulness aspect is so important in improv. Can you speak on that a little bit too?
Yeah. When I was younger and doing improv, I mean, I really, really wanted to do improv. I really loved it, but I had such social anxiety and like self-confidence issues and resentment, and I was bullied when I was younger and all this stuff. You know, it was very difficult to shed my identity to play the game. So it was like this conflict where I couldn't quite do it, because I was never mindful of what was actually going on. I was just succumbing to all of my feelings of fear and frustration. So nowadays, after having, you know, done therapy and, you know, studied this and practiced it now for a while, I find myself to be like mindful all the time, where I just living life consciously, you know, like you're both the actor in the movie and the person sitting in the theater watching it.
Right.
And depending on the context, you can kind of put your attention on either side. Sometimes it's better to just enjoy and be in the movie, and sometimes it's better to step back and watch the movie and say, oh, don't go in that door. But so with improv, I always hear people talking about that it's all about spontaneity and like reacting, and you're just reacting. And then you go to some classes and people are just reacting, and they're like, that's improv. And it's not, because there's no mindfulness. They're just reacting. The idea is to bring mindfulness to the situation, to understand the feelings involved with what you're creating, as well as your own feelings and the person's feelings that you're in the scene with, and sort of train yourself to make these more conscious decisions in how to react. Oh, I'm going to react with a yes and. I'm going to react in a constructive manner. I'm going to react in a, you know, I'm not going to steamroll them. I'm going to listen to them. It's just all these things, but it takes a lot of time because we're so not used to it in the real world. So the improv kind of helps you practice, like when somebody says something to you, take a second, wait, what did he just say? Okay, what am I feeling? Okay, I would have reacted this way, but I'm going to actually react this way, because that will lead to a desired effect, which is to say cohesion, constructive nature. So yeah. Mindfulness and improv.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm going to speak to the word react. React is kind of a knee-jerk reaction, knee-jerk experience to something that happens. In Meisner acting, they talk about a pinch and an ouch. Somebody says something, you react to that with emotion or whatever. But I like the word respond, because if you'll forgive me, respond, RESP, comes from the Latin to breathe. And breath work, which is so important in mindfulness, is what I think as an improviser we need to do and to teach, to take a breath, maybe two, before we get back into the scene. And so that correlates with mindfulness and improv. Yeah.
Response. Yeah, maybe that's the difference. There's a difference between a response and a reaction.
Yeah. And
maybe learning to tell the difference between the two is really crucial, because there's a lot of reacting in life, not a lot of responding. Mm-hmm. I like it. I made a note. Yeah.
You know, go ahead.
Breathing is like, it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm actually, it's interesting. I realized it was breathing, or, I mean, it's always been breathing, but it hit me several years ago. But it's only been this particular year that I've really engaged in like much deeper breath work. Beforehand, I was able to do improv and whatnot, kind of like holding my own breath, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Usually, like I can just tell myself to take a breath and I'll do it. I don't necessarily have to like actually physically breathe to do it. Whereas the physical aspect of breathing brings a whole other dimension to your perception of reality. So it's interesting to fuse the two, especially in the social interactions. So that's an aside. Anyway.
Yeah. And you mentioned before, you've had a lot of therapy. Eric, I know you're not that old compared to some people on this interview today, but how much therapy have you had?
It was only 2.5 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. September 2009 until May 2012.
And you found a therapist that you really clicked with, you could work with right away.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. I didn't know what to do. My parents made me see therapists after they got divorced when I was 9 because they were worried that was going to mess me up. But the damage had already been done way before that. They should have known that. And I never wanted to talk in a therapist session back then. Right. And then when I decided to seek one out on my own, which is very important, I didn't know what to do. I just Googled therapy in San Francisco, and that was his website. So he was great. I think he gave me like the parental voice that I never had. The real kind of parental voice, the one that's very, understanding, but also asks questions and wants to understand. And, that's a hard voice to find in the world, the ideal parent. I think that's why people refer to the Holy Father as a father. It's like we really wish we had a father or some parental figure to interact with us in this way, but they don't really exist because everybody's just a person. And it's hard to be that, it's hard to be untangled from your own stuff, to help somebody else. So it was really great. And the process of the therapy of distilling down and looking beyond the surface and constantly pushing it. And even though, it might lead to all kinds of fears that pop up or maybe you cry, you just keep going because you're trying to solve a problem, in my view. And as a designer or a programmer, it's the same process. You're just taking these big concepts, trying to break them down into smaller and smaller pieces and build those. And when I realized it was halfway through, I think, the end of 2010, when I realized that the process that I was doing with therapy was also the same as design, I suddenly became less afraid to dive deeper, because for a while there it was I don't know what I'm going to uncover. Everything that I uncover is going to change my perception of reality, and I like my reality, or maybe I don't, or I don't know, but it's stable. And I think a lot of people, they feel scared when they push it to some things that might tug at the truth that they feel inside. And I understand that it's terrible. But when I realized that it was an objective problem to solve that wasn't really about me, it was just a problem to solve about this character that existed. And all of the crazy stuff that made him. Then I was able to take a much more mindful and objective approach and just solve the problem. Because the worst case, I uncover something that's unpleasant, and then I sit with it, and then it goes away. And then it's, I want to see people doing that. Maybe, respond, breathing, sitting with it. It's nice. It's a much nicer way to live.
And how did your therapy influence your improv game and your improv workshops?
Well, for a while there, once I deconstructed my identity all the way, I really went off the deep end on purpose. I was like, how far does this go? I kind of reached this point where I felt like I didn't really exist anymore, which was really great. I think a lot of people fear death, but I need to know if it's the difference between the actual dying, or is it the non-existence, the conceptual non-existence. And I went to Burning Man during this period.
I know you did. I'm glad I want to hear about Burning Man. Yeah.
Yeah. Burning Man, it has all kinds of, people are going to say all kinds of things about it. Just like the world, there's all kinds of things you can say about it. Okay. It all depends on who you go with and where you go. It's a huge place. You're going to find all kinds of people. I decided, because I was in this state of non-existence, to go with a completely open mind. I was just I want something new. I want to be, dare I say, reborn. But I whittled everything down. Lots of things in life are disappointing. Lots of things are also beautiful. Just give me something basic and straightforward and uncomplicated. And it was great. It was, that's a separate story. There's a great cathartic therapy story in this, but
Okay.
I'll save that. And it was a good place just to sort of exist for a while, and be free of the societal norms and structures that you're so used to. And the people that I met were very friendly and very welcoming. And that was new for me because I was habitually very scared of people because they're not like that. So I remember meeting this guy it was his third year, and he was like going around talking to everybody, being very friendly. And I was like, how are you able to just go around to everybody so easily? Like, I'm so afraid of doing that. And he says, nah, man, it's Burning Man. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but okay. And sure enough, 3 years later, for me, I'm that guy. Not just at Burning Man, but in the world. And I wasn't like that before. So that was a great place to start going back into improv, because you're basically like, you recognize that you're not really anything. You can be whatever the context demands, and you can have a good time with it. And all you want is just to get along and have a nice time. That was my place of being. So I started doing some improv. I was living in Colorado, and I was doing some improv there. And I noticed that, it was awesome. I can't believe that I put it off for so long out of fear, because now that I had this new understanding, it was exactly what I was always wanting, just people getting along, trying to get along. And I was ready to do that myself without carrying any of my emotional, baggage. But I noticed that, different teachers are not necessarily very good at helping people to figure themselves out. I mean, a lot of them they reprimand or whatever, and it's like, we're here to learn how to be better people. So it requires that a teacher be very compassionate, kind of like a therapist, but for a group, except that a lot of improv teachers are not therapists. So I said, well, I'm not a therapist, but I know therapy, I know what we're going for, and I'm very compassionate, and I want the best for people because that makes me feel good. So I rallied some people together, and we started another class that was more mindful. It's still there, Mindful Improv in Boulder.
Cool.
And those guys are much more into meditation and Buddhism, so they bring a lot of the breathing stuff to it. But it just sort of showed me that improv with therapy in mind can be really awesome in all kinds of ways, and I've just been doing that since. That's all.
And that's not all. That's a lot. It's terrific. And I think that's kind of the therapeutic process many of us are going through, is using it in a mindful way and helping people sort out their feelings. And several of our colleagues you want to talk about the new website you launched?
Oh, the Mindful Improv? Yeah. I mean, my hope is to find all of the people out there who are doing this, because I'm not the only one. That's one thing I've learned working in tech, is that anytime you think you're unique, you're not. You're always a statistic everywhere. So there have got to be people everywhere who are using improv from a mindful perspective, using improv not just to make jokes and have fun, but to actually teach people how to understand themselves. And the problem is they're all over the place. I never knew of the network before, and maybe there isn't a network, maybe there are scattered networks, but we have technology tools that allow for building of great communities. I mean, Facebook's almost 2 billion people on a website, essentially. So it's a community platform that I built after I worked at Facebook, and it's basically just Facebook, but you can put your own branding. And so hoping we can use this to gather all the folks in this space, build up a nice community of sharing information, sharing tips and tricks, even just getting some nice validation that there are other people who care about the things that you do. And then maybe together, as a large enough group, we can be like a unified voice to push this, in society.
Right. Well, we have a Canadian friend, Cameron Algie, is a member of our group, and he's doing improv for anxiety, and he's not a trained therapist, but he went through his own process and is doing it. Yeah.
Oh, I saw that he joined. Yeah, I should send him a message. Good. Yeah. It's crazy. Anxiety is a real thing.
Well, I think it's the number one. It is the number one psychiatric disorder. We treat more anxiety than anything else. So,
Anxiety and depression, right?
Yeah, anxiety and depression, and that's where these improv games come in so well to help people deal with anxiety, cope with it, find tools. Just even the breathing. Sometimes I use aromatherapy in my classes too to help involve all of the senses. So when we're visualizing a scene, we can immerse ourselves with all senses.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah, yeah, breathing. Breathing. Holding space is really what it comes down to.
So how do you teach a workshop? Tell me a little bit about how you start a class and what you do.
Well, my ideal is to have like consistent groups. If they can be the same group of people coming once a week, twice a week, like therapy. But more importantly, because I want people to understand not just the scene work that they're doing, but like the person behind the actor. So like you're doing, I'm in a class with Chuck, and like I don't know who Chuck is, but after interacting with him for a number of times, I get a sense of who Chuck is. I better. And that's really important to understanding it because, in the world, we're always playing different roles. That's how you live. That's what identity is. It's a connection to the community. So if you just look at that, that's a very difficult way to get to know somebody. You have to look at who's underneath there playing that role and other roles. So that's really important just as a beginning concept. So the first thing we do is the name game, which I know you also do. That's where you say your name and a letter that starts with an adjective starts with the same letter. So I would be like, exactly Eric, and you do some kind of gesture to really bring it through. Exactly. And you can really exaggerate it. That's the whole point. And, everybody goes around the room and they do that. But it's interesting because a lot of people will be really good at this game. They just bring their energy.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody remembers their name. Everybody remembers their gesture. It's actually a really great beacon of safety for people who are more anxious because that's like the one gesture that if they forget, they can do. And then other people show up and they have no energy whatsoever. They're just like, nice, Nick.
Right.
And I mean, it's almost offensive. I know they don't mean it, but it's like, come on, man, show up.
Right.
So it's a nice balancing there. And if people get really into it and it feels better, then everybody kind of levels up, which is nice. People get more comfortable, and then by the end of it, they're like, oh, okay, I kind of know these people. That's great. But then we switch gears. We go right into two-word story. Two-word story, tell a story as a group, 2 words at a time. And that really messes people up because the skills that were involved in that first game are totally not involved in the second game. You cannot be fully yourself. You have to be completely existence-less for the second game because all you are doing is listening and just continuing the thread without existing at all. Many times, the 2 words you will say are of the, and you have to say them because if you don't, you break the trust that people are putting into the group space. And this is where there are so many downfalls. So I get both sides of the spectrum in terms of understanding what are we working with here.
Mm-hmm.
We're working with a group of people who are self-confident but really bad listeners, or not very self-confident but good listeners, or they're really egotistical and of course they're terrible listeners. But whatever it is, then we can direct the rest of the session, the games, to like focus on the deeper things. Yeah.
That's a great. Talking about 2-word story, we have some time on our interview here. You want to do a 2-word story?
All right, we'll do a 2-word story right now.
Okay.
Theme or no theme? I say theme.
Okay, pick a theme.
Oh, you pick. Give us a word, anything.
Party.
Party. Okay. We're going to do that thing where we stare at each other for a little bit?
Yeah.
Get into a sense? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Eric.
What did
You say
yesterday at...
the luncheon
Oh, I
said it was
nice to...
be there.
That's it.
Are you
Going to
really tell
me that
is what?
you said.
I don't.
Believe that.
No way.
Well, what?
Do you
Think. I
said it
Was exactly.
my birthday.
Okay, so I'm just gonna stop because
Okay.
we're not even talking about a party. It's really dangerous, I find, when we do like the dialogue in two-word story, because it's like we're mixing.
That is
subject
harder.
matters,
But I was getting to a party, the birthday.
Right.
It's taking the time to be
Let's-
there.
Let's do it and stick with third person.
Gotcha.
Some other character. maybe.
Gotcha. Okay.
The one we did the other day, though, was just us. It was really good.
Yeah.
We were talking on the phone. All right. Still with party. Yeah.
Okay.
Timmy was
Very excited.
for the
Birthday party
this weekend.
because he
Liked the
ice cream and
girl.
whose birthday
It was
Susan was
12 years.
old and
Had bright
beautiful, shiny.
blue eyes.
Also, she
Wore a
beautiful green
skirt every
day of
the year.
because of
The skirt
he was
smitten and
followed her
everywhere. This
became a
habit of
Timmy's and
eventually Susan
had to put
him down.
except for
The fact
her birthday
party was
coming up,
she didn't
want him
anywhere near
her, but
in this
time she
accepted. So
she invited
Timmy to
the party.
when he
Got there
she was
very frightened,
she ran
fast away,
while Timmy
followed her.
stop running.
Timmy said,
I can't
give you
any more
presents than
what I,
hold here.
he said.
Okay, Susan,
I'll stop,
because you,
said so.
the moral
Of this,
story is
if you
invite people
to your
birthday party,
make sure
they aren't
stalking you. That was good.
That was great.
That was good. Should be also noted that the moral is the end of the game here. Anytime the scene or the story kind of reaches a natural ending, quote unquote natural ending,
Right.
then the next person says the moral of the story is, and then you continue it. But the moral is really interesting because in a group of non-confident people, the stories can just go on and on and on and on and on.
Right.
And even though it's completely awkward and it feels really weird, nobody will acknowledge how weird it feels because they're just trying to fit in and keep it going. It takes a real power stance in life just to say the moral, because we've had really great classes where it goes on and on and on, and then somebody takes it upon himself to say the moral, and everybody starts laughing because it's breaking that terrible tension that everybody feels that nobody wants to acknowledge. And these kind of things are everywhere. So games like this are great ways to teach people how to be aware of that feeling and do something about it. You know?
Well, selfishly, I love it because I had never played it before the other day with you. So I think it's a wonderful game.
Yeah, I think it's one-word story is cool. Two-word story gets a little bit more complicated, you know?
Yeah, and it's an example of group mind. Once people get more comfortable with each other, that process of group mind. Do you see that sometimes? Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good set there where you said things I was expecting. So
And you did too.
yeah, see, that creates trust. Now,
And trust and taking risk is so important for everybody today. It's incredible. People that are so afraid to step out of themselves at all because of fear of not being liked or not being loved.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the world's a pretty terrible place. I mean, even my own family, at different times, not all the time. My family's great, but people have their stuff, and they're not always focused on the conversation at hand. They're thinking of this and this and this. So it's not even like, at first I was upset with people. How dare you not communicate clearly? But then I realized that they're not even they don't even have space to communicate clearly with themselves. So everybody's struggling with this all the time. Most of the time, nobody means it. That's why it's on you as a person to step it up and take ownership of the scenario, because you can't always depend on somebody else doing it. And if they do tend to dominate the scenario, they're usually doing it for the wrong reasons. So, But, I think people coming into a nice improv class, especially one that's consistent, a couple times, maybe just, you go to 8 classes once a week with the same group of people. And when you feel that social harmony every time you leave, you will start naturally to notice how it doesn't exist in your day-to-day. Maybe not in your work environment, maybe not in your family, maybe not with your friends. And because you now know the feeling, and you become aware of the feeling, and you can put words to the feeling, and you can create the feeling yourself, it gives you much more power to sort of call out and say, hey, so-and-so, this interaction doesn't feel great. And they're like, how is it supposed to feel? And you're like, well, actually, I have actually had nice interactions. It feels like this. I don't know what to say. I've experienced it, and then it kind of is a catalyst for change. Either the other people, they're like, okay, tell me about it, and maybe I'll try it. Or they're just like, screw you, you're different. And then they leave. So, whatever. But,
well, it's about being genuine, learning to be genuine, which not everybody has. And believe me, I go into phony Margot at times. I get that mask on, and yeah.
No, we have it. Again, to be a member of society, you have to have a layer. That's the rule. If you want to live in the woods, you don't have to have a layer. I try to avoid people as much as possible until I need them. But you need a layer, so it's okay. It's the only difference is as long as you know that you're putting on the layer.
Right.
You're putting on a costume when you walk out the door, and you're wearing the costume, and then you come home and you take off the costume. Which is why it's so funny that people go to Burning Man to wear costumes, because it's like, you should go there to not wear costumes.
So are you going this year? Are you going back?
No, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
I think the next time I would like to go would be with a girl. It would be a really interesting thing as a couple.
As a couple?
Yeah, couples counseling is of particular interest to me, because I've watched all of my friends in relationships over the years, and I've not had one myself that lasted longer than 3 months. We're also young, I guess, people in the 20s, so that's a whole thing. But it's just been interesting, the way that people communicate in relationships. I know how I would communicate in one, and how I'd like to communicate, very much related to improv and therapy stuff. But finding somebody else who also lives that way and wants to live that way is very difficult. And, when difficulties arise, people put up their defenses, and then they can't communicate, and then the whole system breaks down.
Yeah.
And that's it. End of story.
Well, Eric, tell me a little more about this. Tell me what you're working on now. You've got some fantastic blogs on, what is the name of your website where you have your great blogs?
Fish of the Bay?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to move those to the improv stuff, but yeah, I haven't written on that in a while. But interestingly, I started that blog when I started in the tech space. I was, working at Facebook, designing social systems, spending a lot of time thinking about personal psychology and the value of identity, which had always been a big fascination for me growing up. Identity. Who am I? What is this? How do I communicate with people what my identity is? I don't know. When Facebook came out and they had all the profile fields and you could sign up and make a profile, I was like, yes, give me more profile fields, more ways to express myself. And so when I was working there, I was elated, because that was it was great for me having anxiety to use Facebook and feel like I had a sense of presence in this thing that connected me to other people. because I was not yet comfortable to be that on my own. So the beginning of the blog is the importance of identity. It's like, we need identity. Identity is great. Look, I have all these things now on all these online profiles. And then, interestingly, that was also when I started my therapy. So the blog kind of goes through this cycle where at the very end of it, it talks about the absence of identity being like far more important. So I need to like organize that better, but I think it's funny that it kind of did like a full 180 there.
And how do you feel? How do you feel about Facebook today? Are you concerned about some of the places it's going? I mean,
it is what it is. That's the only I can say about it. You know, like there's no reason, there's no value in bringing concern, because there's not like when something happens, people will stand up for it, and then there'll be a change. But there's no point in thinking about it because it's just moving really fast. And anything that you read about in the media is like this compared to what's actually happening. That's one thing I know from being on the inside, is that the media and the way it's described to regular folks, non-tech people, I mean, it's a fraction of what's really going on.
Really?
So, the stuff that they announce, not just Facebook, but any of the tech companies, I mean, they're so much further ahead. It's really amazing. It is. It's really incredible. It's never the technology, it's always the people. Right. The technology itself is amazing. The people who are using it are not so amazing, both in terms of advertisers and certain business folks, or just not very educated users, just everywhere. The thing with the site that I set up for us on my system is it's the same tools. It looks like Facebook, works like Facebook. There's no ads. But the idea is hopefully we'll have better people who are there for a reason, not just to chit-chat about what they drank on Sunday, but to actually talk in meaningful, conversation. Same tools, no problems.
Well, I think we're off to a good start. I mean, we have psychologists who are actually doing research to create what we call evidence-based scientific proof that improv can help change people with, say, anxiety. And then we can really use the word, as a clinical social worker, improv therapy is not a real recognized word right now. So, it's funny.
Yeah, well, that's great, but I'm always very wary of, like, higher education and all of that, because you kind of just get into this, like, recursive loop of your own world. Like, here I am, I got over anxiety, I still have it, and I can use it I can transmute it into positive energy, but I'm like the guy who kind of recently crossed the bridge. I'm not the guy at the top of the mountain, and I'm ready to help other people cross the bridge as well. Yeah. But the more and more you go up the mountain, the further away you get from the bridge. I mean, I had teachers in college teaching me computer science who were pursuing, who had PhDs, and they were pursuing really intense algorithm stuff, and they were trying to teach me intro to computer science. Now that's not going to work. Right. They're so far away, right? So, if we get things now in schools with programs and the licensing and all this stuff, it creates so many barriers now.
Well, it doesn't mean that people can't do it like you and Cameron and others that are doing improv for anxiety. It just means in our field, it's legitimized for us to do. It's not considered an alternative therapy. So,
why can't you just practice improv anyway, as a therapist?
Of course I can, but I'm just saying if insurance companies, I don't want to get into all the details, but it's not.
Sure. Yeah. Our social systems of trust.
Yes, everything's always in initials in therapy world. First it was CBT and now it's DBT, and you have all these initials. But what it is we're doing it anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, good. Good. Yeah, I mean, I agree. If you're doing it in some kind of clinical sense for people with extreme cases, then you definitely probably need some training to be sensitive to all that. Yeah.
And part of the idea is getting people off of medications today. So many people are on medications, and what they don't realize is a platform here, but when you take an anti-anxiety, it takes about 20 minutes to take effect. If you start breathing and doing a game like What Are You Doing, it can vanish immediately. So there's so much significance for it in treatment.
Yeah, that's true. Usually, I don't know what to do with my extra energy, but I started doing yoga a few months ago, and it's all breathing. So it's good.
It's wonderful.
No drugs required.
Well, listen, on my site, I'm going to post the information about you and mindfultherapy.org and any other thing we can talk about. And I want to thank you so much for giving of your time. Any closing that you'd like to share? But any thoughts you had that have you been thinking?
For anybody who's watching,
yeah.
who is an improv loving, practicing, therapist minded personality, go check out the website. mindfulimprov.org.
And thank you so much, Eric. You have a wonderful day. Namaste.
Yeah, namaste in bed. See ya.